Hello, and we're going to go through the Grade 9 Assessment of Mathematics for 2013, the released assessment questions for the applied program. And we're going to take a look at the multiple choice questions. So they can be found online at the EQAO website. If you go to the EQAO website, which is eqao.com, and you look under Parent Resources, when you look under the parent resources, you can find the assessment booklets and scoring guides for Grade 9 Assessment of Mathematics. And what I'm looking at is the 2012-2013 applied. So at the top of the page, when you click on 2012-2013, you'll see the academic. And if you go down, you'll see applied, and there's released assessment questions. So starting off with number 1, the question says the design for a rectangular garden has a length to width ratio of 7:5. Which of the following could be used to determine the width of the garden if the length is 6.5 meters or 6.5 meters? So if we take a look, it's number 1, and what they've told us, let's figure out what they've told us. They've said that the length to width ratio is 7:5, and the length is 6.5 meters. And what they want us to do is not to determine the width. They don't want just the answer. They want to know which of the following could be used to find the width. So they aren't looking for the answer, they're looking for the method. And because it's a multiple choice, on the exam you wouldn't need to write all this out. You would need to use a piece of paper to figure it out. But it's good to keep your thoughts organized so that you can figure it out properly. So if you have, they said the ratio is length to width. And remember that ratios can be written as fractions. So that would be your length to width ratio. And they said it's 7:5. So you'd write the 6.5 on the top because it's like an equivalent fraction. And you're looking for the width, so it would be the x. So you write down your ratio, and you set it equal to another ratio, and that's what you'd use to find it. Now, that exact one is not there, but it doesn't matter which is on the left and which is on the right of the equal sign. So you can switch the whole thing around and make it look like this. And as you can see, that is answer D, so that's what you would select. Multiple choice 2, they want to know the value of K when you have two ratios set equal to each other. 9 over K equals 24 over 32. Now I can think of at least 3 ways to do this. If all else fails, you can always do guess and check. So you do 24 over 32, and you put 0.75, and then you just put in the answers. Because it's multiple choice, you can do this. You wouldn't be able to do it if it was one where you were working everything out, because you wouldn't know the possible answers. But take advantage of the fact you have multiple choice. So 9 over 12 is 0.75. And you find the right answer is A. If you want to check the other answers, just to be sure, you see 9 over 5 is 0.6, 9 over 15 was 0.6, 9 over 16 is 0.56, and 9 over 17 is it would round to 0.53. So that's one method you can use. The other, your teacher may have shown you how to cross multiply. So you'd write the thing out, you multiply this, you multiply that, so you get 24K equals 9 times 32 is 288. and then you divide both sides by 24, and you're going to get that K would equal 12. So again, your answer is A. Another way that you can do it is that if you have 9 over K equals 24 over 32, what you do to one side, you do to the other. What you can do is do the reciprocal of both, or flip the things both upside down because they're ratios. So you could also write this K over 9 equals 32 over 24. All of a sudden, this becomes really easy to solve, because K over 9, to get rid of the 9 because it's divided, you just multiply both sides by 9. And if you do that, then you have your 32 times 9 divided by 4. 32 times 9 over 4, or 24, sorry, and that is equal to 12 as well. So now we're going to look at question number 3, which is a multiple choice question from the EQAO exam. And it says, last week Tanisha paid $65.72 for 62 kilograms of potatoes for her restaurant. Today the price of potatoes is $0.02 per kilogram lower. How much will Tanisha pay for 50 kilograms of potatoes today? So let's try to figure this out. Again, it's multiple choice, so you may not need to write all this out. You think you can calculate it in your head, but it is a good idea to organize your thoughts so that you make sure that you cover all the steps. So if you write down what's true, you have last week, what was true was that she paid $65.72 for 62 kilograms of potatoes, whereas today, that you know that the price is $0.02 or 2 cents a kilogram less. And what we're looking for is how much for 50 kilograms. So she's not buying the same amount. Before she bought 62 kilograms and now she's buying 50, and the price is different because it's gone down. So what you need to do when you look at this is first find out what the price is for 1 kilogram, because over here we know that the price per kilogram went down, and here we have the price for 62 kilograms, so that's not useful. We need to know the price for 1 kilogram. So you go and you have 65.72, and to find the price for 1 kilogram you divide that by 62 kilograms, and that tells you for each kilogram what she paid was $1.06. Then we go over and we use this fact that the price is 2 cents per kilogram less. So it was $1.06 per kilogram, and now we're going to pay 2 cents per kilogram less. So what we're actually paying is $1.04 per kilogram. Are we done? Well, you go back and you check, and it says how much does she pay for 50 kilograms, so we're not done. So to figure out what she pays for 50 kilograms, here's the price for 1, so you multiply that by 50. 50 kilograms times $1.04 per kilogram. That tells you that she's going to pay $52, so that is the right answer, is C. Now we'll move to question 4, is C. Now we'll move to question 4, where it reads, a bicycle has a regular price of $175. It is on sale for 20% off. Which of the following is closest to the total cost, including 13% tax? So to work this out, you should keep track again of what it is that you know and what it is that you're looking for. So you have the regular price is $175. The sale price is 20% off, and the total tax is 13%. Now there are two ways of doing this. I'll do the first one probably the way that you were taught. You would take $175 and you'd calculate what 20% of that is. So you'd get $175, 20% is 0.20. So that tells you that you have $35 off, so that's your discount. So you take that off the $175 to find that your sale price is $140. Now, if you take a look, 140 is one of the answers, but you have to think, am I done? If I've gone back and they said, what is the closest to the total cost, including 13% tax, and you haven't done anything with that yet. So don't stop yet. So you have to figure out what the total tax would be. So if the sale price is $140, then you have to figure out what 13% of that is. So you multiply it by 0.13. And you find out that the tax is $18.20. So you take your $140 and you add the $18.20 to it, and you get $158.20 as your total price, and so the closest one to that is B. Another way of doing it, take a line here, or what you can do is, if you think about it, if you have 20% off, that means that what you're paying for is 80%. So you can take 175 and times it by 0.80, and that gets you $140, because what you're paying for, if you had 20% off, you're paying for 80%. So you're paying $140. And then if your tax is 13%, then what you're paying for in total is 113%, or 1.13. So the total price is $158. Now you can use whichever method works for you. If you've been taught this way to work it out step by step, then do it that way. If you understand, if you've been taught the shorter method, then you can do it that way. Multiple choice question number 5. It reads, the volume of the cylinder shown below is 408 centimeters cubed. So the volume is 408 cubic centimeters. Which of the following is closest to the radius? So what you're looking for is the radius of the cylinder. If you go to your formula sheet, on that sheet you look for a cylinder and make sure you find the volume. And you'll find that they have written down that V equals pi r squared h. You can use this fact. Now there's two different ways you can do it. One is to solve the equation, and the other is, because we have multiple choice, you can try substituting in the numbers and see which gives you the answer. So I'll do the formula way first. You're trying to solve for r, so you want to get that by itself. And sometimes it's easier to write the formula the other way around because people like solving for things this way. So to get r by itself, the pi is multiplied and the h is multiplied. So you're going to divide by pi and by h on both sides. So you'll get r squared equals v over pi h. To solve that, then you have to square root both sides. So r is going to be the square root of v over pi h. So when you put in your numbers, they already said the volume was 408. Pi is 3.14159. You may only need 3.14, but there's more decimals there if you need. And the height that you were given was 8 centimeters. We forgot to write that up top. When you put that in your calculator and you work it out, then what you get is that the answer is approximately 4 centimeters. And so the answer there is A. Now, if you're on the test and it's very stressful, you're not sure which way to go, because it is a multiple choice question, you can always try guess and check. So what you do is you take your formula is V equals pi r squared h. Remember to check, make sure what they're giving you. They said which one's closest to the radius, so they're going to give you a bunch of radius. So let's check 4 centimeters. Is this going to be the right one? So you'd go V equals pi 4 squared times 8. And when you put that in, you get 401 centimeters. And it's going to be centimeters cubed because that was centimeter when you put the units in. So it just happened that the first one that you tried is A. You may have to try the others. If you did try the others, you'd do V equals pi 8 squared times 8, and V equals pi 14 squared times 8, and V equals pi 16 squared times 8. And you'd work those out, and you would find that none of those are the right answer, that the right answer is A. So now we'll look at multiple choice question number 6. And the question states, what value of x makes the equation 4x minus 5 equal to minus 6x plus 15 true? So you write down your equation, and you could try again the guess and check and substitute in for x, but you have been taught how to solve equations, and that is another quick way of doing it. So we'll do it that method. So first thing I would try to do is move this minus 5 over to the right hand side. So to do that, you add 5 to both sides so that you get 4x equals minus 6x plus 20. And now we're going to try to get this 6x over to the left hand side. So we add 6x to both sides. And now this is gone. We collect like terms on the left hand side. So you get 10x equals 20. The 10 is connected to the x through multiplication, so you have to undo that. You divide. So you end up with x equals 2, and that gives you A for an answer. We're now looking at multiple choice question number 7. And what it says, an equation representing the height of a burning candle is h equals 2d minus 1/2 t, where h is the height in centimeters, d is the diameter in centimeters, and t is the amount of time that the candle has been burning in minutes. A candle has a diameter of 6 centimeters, and if the candle burns for 2 minutes, what will its height be? So again, we should write down what we know. So h equals 2d minus 1/2 t, and the d is equal to 6 centimeters, and the t equals 2 minutes. Now you should check back in the question to make sure your units are what they're asking for. So they asked for h is going to be given in centimeters, that's what we're looking for. D is diameter in centimeters, and it says in the question that was a diameter in centimeters, so you don't have to do any more work to it. And the time is supposed to be given in minutes, and it is. So they've been nice, there's no tricks there. Otherwise you might have to convert radius to diameter. They could have given you time in seconds, and you'd have to convert it to minutes. So you want to check things like that out. So here then it's just a straight substitution, and you put 6 in for your d, and you do minus 1/2, and you put 2 in for your t, and then you do your bed mass. This is multiplication, so 2 times 6 is 12. A half of 2 is 1. So, and 12 minus 1 is 11 centimeters. And if you look there, you find that answer is C. Now we'll take a look at multiple choice question 10. There are a few different scatter plots, and they say which scatter plot shows data with no trend. And you just have to remember that what a trend is that as you change your independent variable, that you see something happen to the independent variable. So in A, you get something where that you can see that there is kind of a line that you'd be able to put, and that would be your trend, that as you go along your independent variable, that the data is tending to stay horizontal. And that was Q. If you take a look at B, the data is tending, it looks kind of like this. So you can see that as you shift your independent variable, that things are trending down, that things are actually kind of coming down this way as they go. So here, I guess stuff's kind of staying horizontal as you go. And in C, it's like the data is just randomly everywhere. So as you go up in your independent variable, there's nothing that you can tell about what's going to come up next in terms of your dependent variable. So this gives you a hint that it's probably this one, but you should always check your next. And they have Q and they have R, and it kind of looks like, now it's not linear, you're getting something that looks like this, but there is a pattern that as you go along and you change your independent variable, that there's some kind of pattern as to what's happening to this one. So that tells you that C is the correct answer, that there's no relationship between if you go up or down on any of these, that you'd be able to tell what's going to happen in general to your dependent variable. We're going to take a look at multiple choice number 11. Kim owes her mother $100. She will pay her back $5 each week. Which table shows data about the amount Kim still owes for the first 5 weeks of payments? So it's a good idea with multiple choice, even though there's answers there, to work out what you think the answer should be first in completion, and then compare it to the ones there. So you're going to start off, what is it before she starts paying back, and there. So the question says that she owes her mother $100, so that's how much she borrowed, and then she pays back $5 each week. So you draw it out, and 90, 85, and 80, and 75. Put the dollar sign up here, so. And you take a look, and which one matches that, and you see that that is answer D. And like I said, it's good to draw it out what you think is right, and then compare it to what is there, just in case they put a little trick somewhere. And it reads, consider the 4 different relationships represented below. How many are linear relationships? And 2 of them are plots, and 2 of them are tables of values. So you just have to remember when you have a linear relationship that it plots as a straight line. Also that the first differences will be equal to each other. So if you look at the first 2 that are plots, you can tell that the first one, that it is indeed a straight line. So it is a linear relationship. And the second one is a curved line, so it is not a linear relationship. So now we move on to the table of values, and I'll just sketch them out here The first one has W and A, 0, 0, 2, 14, 4, 20, 6, 18, and 8, 10. And before you even do first differences, if you look down the dependent variable, you can see that even though the independent variable is jumping by the same amount every time, it's going up by 2 every time, that on the other side with the dependent variable, you see the fact that it goes up and then comes back down to 0, that would tell you right there that it had to change direction, so it's not linear. But if you want to continue to check, you can do first differences. So to do first difference here, you do 14 minus 0. And remember that you have to divide by what's going on the other side, the difference of 2. So you get 14 over 2, which is equal to 7. You do a first difference here. You take 20 minus 14 over 2. 20 minus 14 is 6 over 2. So you get 3. Your first differences are equal, so that's another no. We look at the next table of values, and we want to check that out. And you have an N and a C, 1, 13, 2, 9, 3, 6, 4, 4, 5, 3. I'll do my first differences from the bottom because some of you may have taught that way. The independent variable is just going up by 1 every time, so that makes life easier. So you do 3 minus 4 is equal to 1. You do first difference here, and you get 4 minus 6. Oh, sorry, this should have been a minus 1. And 4 minus 6 is going to give you minus 2, so again, this is not linear. So the answer that you're looking for, that we only have one that is linear, so that gives the answer of A. Number 13, multiple choice. It says which of the relationships represented below has a constant rate of change. And what we said is that rate of change, that's basically your slope, and a constant rate of change, that would be something that is linear. So if you take a look at the graphs, the only one that is linear is C. We're going to take a look at multiple choice number 14. And it reads, each of the 3 points on the grid below gives information about the altitude of a hot air balloon at a certain time. If the relationship between altitude and time is linear, what was the altitude of the balloon at 4 minutes? So I'll just sketch the graph. You wouldn't need to because it's on your test paper, but here's the sketch of the graph. You are going up on the y-axis. They're telling you is your altitude and in meters, and the x-axis is your time in minutes. And so let's throw some numbers on here, going up by 200s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, 1,800, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 2, 6, 8, 10, 12. And they tell you at 10 minutes, or it shows there, it's on the ground. At 8 minutes, it had been at 500, and at 6 minutes, it had been at 1,000. And because they said it was linear, then you can take a straight edge and you can extend a straight line through all of them. That one dot's off a little bit. And at 4, if you go up, remember this is called extrapolation because you're pulling data from outside where you had actually measured, then you're getting something that's probably, it's probably due to my graph being a little bit off, that it comes off between 14 and 16. The only number there that's between 14 and 16 is your 1,500. So you get 1,500 meters, and the answer there is B. If you want something that's a little more numerical, then you can draw out your table of values. You know you're going back as far as 4 minutes, so we can put that in. And you know at 10 it was at 0, at 8 it had been at 500, at 6 it was at 1,000. You kind of check here, it's a difference of 2 every time, so it's the same difference all along. So you can rely this pattern, whatever pattern you see here, just keep following along, 0, 500, 1,000, that this is going to be 1,500. And then you can check your first differences to make sure it makes sense. So you get minus 250 here, and you get 500 minus 1,000 over 2, it's minus 250 here, and your guess of 1,500, then you do 1,000 minus 1,500 over 2, and that's also going to be minus 250, so you know that you have the right answer, and again that answer is B. Multiple choice number 15 reads, Dakota and Jamie have part-time jobs. The graphs below represent the relationship between earnings and the time each of them works. And they give you two graphs of earnings versus time. And they want to know which graph represents a partial variation and what is the initial value of the relationship. When you do this, you have to remember that for a partial variation, that it does not start from the origin. So when you take a look at that, of the two graphs, that it doesn't go through the origin. So you can either, depending on the shape of the graph, it won't start from the origin, doesn't go through the origin. So you can see that Dakota's graph does indeed go through the origin, starts from the origin, whereas Jamie's doesn't. So you know that now you've just eliminated A and B. It's either going to be C or D. So now what the second part is what is the initial value? So initial value is the value of y when x is 0. And if you take a look on Jamie's graph, at time t equals 0, the value of the earnings is $30. So that tells you that the correct answer is C. For number 16, multiple choice. For babysitting, Becky charges according to the equation C equals 5n plus 9, where C is the amount charged in dollars and n is the number of hours she babysits, and they want to know which statement about this situation is correct. So let's take a look at what the equation means, what they've told you, and from what you have learned in these equations, that when you have the number sitting by itself without a variable with it in a linear equation, that is your initial value. And then the number that is multiplied by your independent variable, that is going to be your rate of change. So if you take a look in the different options, the first one, A, says Becky charges 14 per hour. Well, then 14 per hour is rate of change, and there's no mention at all of an initial value. So the initial value there is 0, so A isn't the option. So A is out. B says that she charges a flat fee of $14. Well, there's no rate of change there, it's just in a flat fee, and so that would be a horizontal line through 14, so that's not it. C, it says she charges an initial fee of $5 plus $9 per hour. So let's go back and look. We said the initial fee was $9 and the rate of change is 5 per hour. So that's not C, so C is not it. So you take a look at D. She has the initial fee of $9, this is looking good, plus $5 per hour. So that's your rate of change. So D is the correct answer. Well, now we'll look at multiple choice number 17, and it reads, each week Marissa withdraws the same amount from her bank account. The equation A equals 1550 minus 90W represents the relationship between the amount of money remaining in her account A in dollars and the number of weeks of withdrawing W. For how many weeks has Marissa made withdrawals when the amount remaining in the account is 110? So what they're asking is, what is W when A equals 110? So what is W when A is equal to 110? So you set A equals to 110 and solve for W is one way of doing this. It doesn't matter that W is on the right hand side. You can move everything else over to the left hand side and it means the same thing. So to get rid of the positive 1550, 1,550, you put minus 1,550 on each side. 110 minus 1,550 is going to get you minus 1440. Now this side it's gone, so you get minus 90W. The minus 90 is connected to the W through multiplication, so you have to divide both sides by minus 90, and minus 1440 divided by minus 90 gives you 16 is equal to W. So the answer is B. Now, if you wanted to do it another way, using guess and check, because it is a multiple choice, you could plug W in and see which of those answers is going to give you A is equal to 110. So we could check, I'll just make a table of values, and they gave you 14, 16, 17, and 18, and we can plug it in. We have 1550 minus 90 times 14, which is 1550 minus 1260, which is equal to 290. So that's not what we're looking for. So that's A is not the answer we want. So you do 1550 minus 90 times 16, and if you check that out, then you get 1550 minus and 90 times 16. If I just pull out my calculator for a second, because I didn't get this ready step by step. 90 times 16 is 1440, and so 1550 minus 1440 is going to give you 110, and that is what you're looking for. So then you know the correct answer is B. And you could check out the other ones as well if you wanted to, just to make sure you're right. Let's look at multiple choice number 18. And it has a bit of a diagram there, and it says Oscar rides his bicycle to the beach along a straight road. While at the beach, he realizes he has forgotten his sunscreen and returns home. The graph below shows information about his trip, and I'll just give it a sketch here. I won't put all the detail in, but we have the y-axis there, and our x-axis, and this is time in minutes, and this is your distance from home. I'll just do a short form of kilometers, and again this is distance versus time. I'll just give it a rough, and that's 1, 2, and 3, and then the time across the bottom is basically skipping by 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. put those numbers in. And he goes up in 10 seconds, he's at like 2.5. So right around here. Again, I'm just sketching it. You wouldn't have to on the test because you'd have that. And then at 25-minute point, and then he comes down. So there's our sketch. That should be a horizontal line, sorry. And then it comes down. So when you get a question like this, again, use the fact that you have a multiple choice question to your advantage and take a look at each answer and see which makes sense. So look at the easy one first. You don't have to do everything in order. So let's take a look. The beach is 10 kilometers from Oscar's home, and they said in the description that he went to the beach, was there for a bit, forgot his sunscreen, so went home. And this says distance from home, so here at the beginning he was at home, and this is where he was at the beach and stayed at the beach. So if you take a look here, the distance is on this side, and obviously the beach is 2.5, oh, I should have put it up here, 2.5 kilometers away from his home, not 10. So A is not right. And D is easy to check. He stays at the beach for 25 minutes before he returns home to get sunscreen. Well, yes, at 25 minutes he did return, but he wasn't at the beach for 25 minutes because he got to the beach at the 10-minute point. So if he got to the beach at 10 minutes and left at 25 minutes, then he was only there for 15 minutes. So D is not an option. So what you need to do now is actually check the ones that have the math in it. So you have to check 5. It says his speed riding to the beach is 0.25 kilometers per minute. So this is kilometers and this is minutes. So you would check out the speed with which he went to the beach. To do that, you would need to basically find the slope of this line, and it would take, so you'd take your 2.5 kilometers minus 0 kilometers, because that's where they started, over 10 minutes minus 0, which is the same as 2.5 over 10, which is 0.25 kilometers per minute. And now, so it's looking pretty good for B. You may want to check C just in case you made a mistake, and then you'd be able to check and see where your mistake might be. It says his riding speed home from the beach is 1.7 kilometers per minute. So you would take a look, how far did he go? So you'd want to then find the slope of this line here. So you go 40. Whoops, sorry, we want the kilometers on top. The distance that he went from 0 down to 2.5, and the time was 40 minus 25, so you have minus 2.5 over 15, which is minus 0.167 kilometers per minute. Speed doesn't have a sign, but that's for another argument. But you can see that that's not the option. So C is not the option, so B is the right answer. Let's take a look at multiple choice number 19. And it reads, water is being pumped to empty a swimming pool. At 6 a.m. the water level is 150 centimeters. Every 2 hours the water level drops by 30 centimeters. What is the earliest time when the pool will be empty? So there's two different ways that you can do it. One is just to think about it and use the pattern. So you could make a table of values where you have the time and you have the depth. And the nice thing about multiple choice is that they're not looking at method, they're just looking to see that you can get the answer and that you realize what the pattern is. So if the time is 6 a.m. the depth would be 150 centimeters, and 8 a.m. that it's at 120, and at 10 a.m. it's at 90, and at 12 p.m. it'll be at 60 because it drops 30 every 2 hours. That's kind of the trick there. You have to be careful that you read it carefully. At 2 p.m. it would be at 30, and at 4 p.m. that it would be down to 0. And if you take a look, that option is C. Now, the other way that you could do it is to use a formula, which if you're good with this, it's probably quicker than writing out a table. You'd know that the initial value is 150 centimeters. The rate of change, you have to be careful, you're dropping, so it's a negative, and it's 30 centimeters every 2 hours, so it's going to be minus 15 centimeters per hour. And you'd have the y as the depth of the water, because that's your dependent variable, and your x is time elapsed, your independent variable. So you would write your formula out. Remember that the rate of change is always multiplied times your independent variable, and then you have added onto it the initial value. And you want to know when that depth of water comes down to 0, so you set y equals to 0. You want to get all your terms that have the variable x on one side and just the number terms on the other, so you can add 15x to here to get rid of it, and it moves it over here. So you end up with 15x equals 150. The 15 is attached to the x through multiplication, so you divide it out, opposite operation, and x equals 10 hours. You have to be careful. 10 hours is not the same as 10 a.m. It's 10 hours from 6 a.m. and you can figure out however you want to, but 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. is 10 hours, so you end up with the same answer of 4 p.m. Now we'll take a look at multiple choice 20, and they give you a graph to consider, and it says data about the total monthly cost to rent video games from 2 online game sites are shown on the graph below. And I'll just sketch it again. I'm not going to draw it out in detail because you would have the book in front of you if you're writing the test. So there's one, and they have number of games rented across as the independent variable on the x-axis, and so they gave that the letter N, and they have the total monthly cost in dollars as your dependent variable, and they gave that the letter C. And basically there's Sir Game a Lot, so I'll just put here is at $30, and it stays at $30 no matter what. And then for the other rental company, it has a slope upwards, Mighty Gamers, and it starts at 15 and it slopes up with them crossing at the value of 6. If you come down here, the number of games rented being 6 is the point of intersection. So when you have something like that, you just have to try to go through each answer and see if any of them make sense compared to what's there. So which of the following is true? It costs more to rent for Sir Game a Lot after 6 games. So you take a look at 6 games. Well, Sir Game a Lot after 6 games is actually cheaper because it's $30, and Mighty Gamers has a value greater than $30 at that point. So you know A is wrong. Then you read B. It costs less to rent from Mighty Gamers after 30 games. Well, if you take a look at Mighty Gamers, the only place where Mighty Gamers is less is when it's less than 6 games. So they're trying to point out, making sure that you know that you read the number of games off the x-axis and not the y. So B is not right. You take a look at C. It costs the same amount to rent 6 games from the 2 sites. Well, here's 6 games. That's your point of intersection, so there's something that's true. But you should always, when you're doing a true-false, check all the distractors, make sure that there isn't something there that you didn't read correctly, and check that last answer. So it costs the same amount to rent 30 games from the 2 sites. Well, 30 games would be off to the right and right off the graph. And again, they're just checking to make sure that you know number of games is here, and this is the dollars, the $30 is up there. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. Now we'll take a look at multiple choice number 24. You could sketch this out and think about it, but using the formulas, I'll go through how to do that. Some students use 24 large square tiles to create a dance floor. They arrange the tiles to make a rectangular area with the smallest possible perimeter. Which arrangement creates an area with the smallest possible perimeter? Now, you may know that when you have the length and width close to each other, then you're going to get the smallest possible perimeter. But let's work it through if you don't know that. So you find on your formula sheet that the perimeters of a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And that makes sense if you think about a rectangle and you have your width and your length. If you're going to go all the way around, you cover 2 lengths and 2 widths. So you just work it out for each one. And they don't say how big the squares are, so the units that you're working out is just how many tile lengths. So your perimeter would be 2 in this case, and your length would be 24, and your width would be 1, so that's going to be 48 plus 2, so this is going to be a perimeter of 50 tile lengths. If you work out B, it's going to be 2 times 12 plus 2 times 2, which is 24 plus 4, which is going to be 28. And then for C, the perimeter is going to be, 2 times 8 plus 2 times 3, which is going to be 16 plus 6, which is 22. And again, these are tile lengths. But again, on a multiple choice, you don't have to worry about that. You just look. And for D, your perimeter is going to be 2 times 6 plus 2 times 4, which is 12 plus 8, which is 20. So the correct answer is D. We'll take the correct answer is D. We'll take a look at multiple choice 25. A wire is attached from the top of a 10-meter pole to a spot on the ground 4 meters away from the base of the pole as shown below. So I'll just sketch that roughly. That you have the wire, and this is 4 meters, this is 10 meters, and this is your wire, and it's right angles because that's the way poles are attached to the ground. Now what you need to recognize here is that you're going to use Pythagorean theorem, and that the wire represents the hypotenuse, and the Pythagorean theorem is c squared equals a squared plus b squared, where c squared is always the hypotenuse. So you put the c squared in, and it doesn't matter which one you put in for a or b. So you work it out. This is 100 plus 16, so that's 116. Don't forget, your final step is always to do a square root. So you get that that's 10.77, which is approximately 11. So the correct answer is A. Multiple choice 26. You have a square-based prism and a cone, and it says which of the following is closest to the volume of the figure. And how to do this is to work it out. You take a look on your formula sheet. I think you probably already know the volume of a cube is its length times its width times its height, but you may not be that familiar with the volume of the cone. And if you take a look on the formula sheet, it's pi r squared h divided by 3. And once you had those two amounts, you'd add them together. So for the cube, you take a look. That's going to be 14 times 14. That's the base of it, is square, but the height is 18. And if you put that in your calculator, you get 3528. And it's going to be cubic centimeters. You multiply this out, you get pi. The radius, you take a look, and the radius is going to be 7 centimeters. And I'll go through in a second where that comes from. The height is 10 divided by 3. So if you take a look, you notice that the base of this object was 14, and so the top of it is going to be 14 by 14 as well. So if you take a look, then the circle sits on it like this, and you want to know what the radius is. So if this is 14, then the radius must have had to have been 7. So that's where the 7 came from. So you multiply this out. If you have a calculator with a pi button, it's really useful. But otherwise, you know, it's 3.14. If you want to put in a few more decimals, you can. 7 squared is 49. And this is a divide, not 101. Times 10 and divide it by 3. And you put that in your calculator, you get 513. So then you have to add those two together. And again, I never put my centimeters cubed here. You get 4041 centimeters cubed, which is, the answer is B. Multiple choice 27. The sphere pictured below has a diameter of 10 centimeters. So they told you the diameter equals 10 centimeters. And they want to know which expression represents the volume. And they don't want the answer, they just want to see if you recognize what should be put in the formula and what the formula actually means. You take a look at your sheet, your equation sheet, and you get 4 pi r cubed over 3. And you notice you were given diameter, but the formula wants the radius. So you have to know that if the diameter is 10 centimeters, then the radius, you divide that by 2, so the radius is 5 centimeters. You put this in, and you get 4 pi 5 cubed over 3. Take a look at your options, and you can see that there's two things they're checking for here. One is the fact that you know that you're using the radius, and the other is whether you know that this cube is actually a cube and not a multiply by 3. So options C and D are already out, so you just have to decide on A or B. And in A, you can see that they did 4 pi 5 times 3 over 3. And that is not the same as what this is. The one that is exactly the same is B. On 28, multiple choice, there is a diagram that looks something like this, with a horizontal line and a V that makes a triangle with an extension. And this angle is 146 degrees. X is in here, and this is 125 degrees. So you can go through and work it out. You know that anytime you see a straight line, that is 180 degrees. You also know the sum of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. To use these facts, first I'm going to try to find this angle here. So this angle plus 125 degrees makes 180 degrees, so I can subtract it off. So 180 degrees minus 125 degrees would give you 55 degrees. So that tells me in here is 55 degrees. And so now I'm going to try to find this one. And you get 180 degrees minus 146 degrees gives you 34 degrees. So now we know that this one is 34 degrees. And so if we add those two together, 55 plus 34, that is 89 degrees. And you know that the sum of all the angles in the triangle is also 180. So if you take off that 89, then you get that there's 91 degrees left for this angle here. And that answer is A. Multiple choice number 29. You have a straight line, and at one end there's a triangle, and it's not a right angle triangle. You have a 62-degree angle at the top. I'm not drawing this to scale, obviously. 140-degree angle here, and X sits here. So again, you're using the fact that any straight line is an angle of 180 degrees, and that all the angles in a triangle, that they will add up to 180 degrees as well. So you take a look. If this is 140, then this one here is going to be 180 degrees minus 140 degrees, which is 40 degrees. So now we know this one is 40 degrees. And the other two, 62 was already done, so you know that 62 degrees plus 40 degrees, you add that up, and you get 102 degrees. And the total of all these three is 180. So you take 180 degrees, and you take off the 102 degrees, and that'll tell you what's left over is 78 degrees is the answer for X. And that is C.